In the recently released Chainsaw Man movie, The Raze Arc, a question is posed. Is it better to be the town mouse or the country mouse? In modern day terms, we would ask, is it better to have city life or rural life? And at this time in my life, I think it's a really fascinating question. And I think many people ask themselves this sort of question, at least implicitly, sometime in their adult life, if not sooner, especially when you have graduated college, have the opportunity to seek out a job and sort of decide where you want to live once you have left home. And I would like to sort of consider this question and read the original Aesop's fable that the question comes from, and we can discuss the pros and cons of the town mouse and the country mouse. So here goes the story. A country mouse invited a town mouse, an intimate friend, to pay him a visit and partake of his country fare. As they were on the bare plowlands, eating their wheat stalks and roots pulled up from the hedgerow, the town mouse said to his friend, "You live here the life of the ants, while in my house is the horn of plenty. I am surrounded by every luxury, and if you will come with me, as I wish you would, you shall have an ample share of my dainties." The country mouse was easily persuaded, and returned to town with his friend. On his arrival, the town mouse placed before him bread, barley, beans, dried figs, honey, raisins, and last of all, brought a dainty piece of cheese from a basket. The country mouse, being much delighted at the sight of such good cheer, expressed his satisfaction in warm terms, and lamented his own hard fate. Just as they were beginning to eat, someone opened the door, and they both ran off squeaking as fast as they could to a hole so narrow that two could only find room in it by squeezing. They had scarcely begun their repast again when someone else entered to take something out of a cupboard, whereupon the two mice, more frightened than before, ran away and hid themselves. At last the country mouse, almost famished, said to his friend, "Although you have prepared for me so dainty a feast, I must leave you to enjoy it by yourself. It is surrounded by too many dangers to please me. I prefer my bare plowlands and roots from the hedgerow, where I can live in safety and without fear." And that's the story. So, as the analogy goes, or as the fable goes, would you prefer a life of luxury and danger, fast pace, or a simple life and one that is slower paced? But the downside is less luxury and less wealth. And it's a very intriguing question. And in many ways, I think the average person, I could be wrong, but I think the average person would say they want the best of both worlds. They want a life of luxury without having all the dangers that come with it. Now, in that case, it's sort of a case of wanting your cake and eating it too, though I know that's a weird phrase, but it's wanting all the best of all the worlds, all the choices. And life usually doesn't happen that way. So again, I return to this question. Would you prefer to be the town mouse or the country mouse? Now, personally, I have lived in an urban area all of my life, and I have witnessed firsthand the dangers that living in the town can bring, but also many of the luxuries that the life can bring as well. My wife, on the other hand, grew up in the country. Very slow paced, much more simple, and it's a very different sort of living. It's a different way of being. And some people would say I am a city slicker, if you will. And and then we would say as city slickers, we would call them country folk, you know. And it's not just some arbitrary mouse story from thousands of years ago. But even to this day, in the modern times, we still distinguish between people who live in the city and people who live out in the country. I wanted to consider some of the pros from both sides and then also some of the cons. The pros to living in the city would be, ease of access to food. Um, when you go to a supermarket in a city, it's usually full of abundance and many choices. Supermarkets in the country usually have less options, and if you live out in the country, you usually live further away from those grocery stores. Um, However, there's a downside to the city in the sense that it's a faster pace. It can be sort of cutthroat at times. Um, in the country, usually it's a much slower feel and pace. And I think just part of growing up is that as a young person, I always desired the town mouse appeal. And I loved the life of luxury, and I loved the ease of access to community. I think there's a lot of good to it. However, as I've gotten older, the downsides and the faster pace and the hustle and the bustle have really taken a toll on me and my my interest in that sort of thing. And now that I'm older, the country mouse side has a lot more appeal. The simple life is a life for me, I think, is the song by Ricky Skaggs. And that has grown and a lot more appeal for me. And that slow pace. I don't necessarily need luxury to be happy. Um, I really sympathize with some of those British authors like Tolkien and others who have this idea that as long as they have their pipe and a good book, they are happy. And that is enough luxury for them. And I have started to sympathize with that a lot more and realized I don't need, a 5-star penthouse to be happy. Well, let me know down in the comments below what you think you prefer at this time. Do you prefer the town mouse, the city life, or do you prefer the country mouse, the simpler country life? Less luxury, less danger, more luxury, more danger. Again, those are kind of simple ways to put it, but there you have it. I'm really interested in people's thoughts on this question. Thank you for watching.